I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tonight on Farage with me, Patrick Christie's massive show this. We will get you another update from Nigel on his banking crisis. Big development. But first, happy birthday to the NHS, 75 today. But is there any reason whatsoever to be cheerful? We will talk to someone fighting government plans as well to house migrants in a historic airbase, leaving military families homeless. This is an absolute shocker. We've got the leader of a local council who's coming on, and get this, we are going to go live to a hearing on the controversial Dambusters dog statue. Are we seriously going to be digging up the Dambusters dog in order to make way for people to live their lives as a former military base? And this has proved incredibly controversial, a massive topic, especially online. Captain Tom's daughter is in hot water over a swimming pool. What on earth is going on with that Captain Sir Tom Moore charity? All of that next, but first it's the news with Polly.
Patrick, thank you. Good evening to you. Our top story tonight, a record waiting list has cast a shadow over the NHS's 75th anniversary. Political leaders, along with members of the royal family, paid tribute to staff during a ceremony at Westminster Abbey in London today. That's as Labour warned the NHS would die out without further investment and modernisation. 7.4 million people are currently on waiting lists, with the government acknowledging that number could get worse before it gets better. The Shadow Health Secretary says the NHS is facing the worst crisis in its history.
I'm deeply angry about the two-tier system we have in our country today, where those who can afford it are paying to go private and those who can't afford it are being left behind. And my answer would be, in the short term, where there is spare capacity in the private sector, we should be paying for it on NHS terms so that people who can't afford it are getting it free at the point of use. That would be my answer. I've got no objection to using private sector capacity to get NHS waiting lists down faster.
Wimbledon championships today were disrupted by 2 Just Stop Oil demonstrations. A protester was arrested on suspicion of aggravated trespass and criminal damage after orange confetti was thrown across Court 18. That's after 2 other activists were detained for targeting the same court. The group says it took action because of the tournament's sponsorship deal with Barclays Bank, which it says has given £30 billion to oil and gas companies over the last 2 years. There's anger over plans which would see the closure of almost every railway station ticket office in England. The proposal, unveiled by the Rail Delivery Group, affects hundreds of stations, with facilities only expected to remain open at the busiest stations. Disability charities and unions are among those who voiced their concerns, saying it's going to impact vulnerable people and will lead to job losses. The decision about which offices will be closed will be made after a consultation. The RMT General Secretary, Mick Lynch, didn't agree with the new measures either when he spoke to GB News this afternoon. Now, a man who planned to attack the late Queen with a crossbow has appeared in court. The court heard that Jaswant Singh Chahal shared his plan with an AI-generated girlfriend. He also wrote in a journal that if Queen Elizabeth was unobtainable, he'd have gone for the Prince, referring to King Charles. The 21-year-old pleaded guilty in February to an offence under the Treason Act. Now, King Charles has been presented with the honours of Scotland. At a service of Thanksgiving in Edinburgh today, the King received the oldest crown jewels in Britain, a crown, a sceptre and a sword made of gold, silver and precious gems. And the day of pomp and ceremony concluded with a fly-past by the red arrows emblazoning the sky in red, white and blue. And the event seeing several protests as well, with Police Scotland confirming 2 women were arrested after they allegedly tried to climb over crowd barriers. You are up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and the TuneIn app. You're with GB News, the People's Channel.
Yes, a quick reminder that we will have a big Nigel Farage banking update to bring to you relatively shortly. But first, of course, it's the NHS's birthday, isn't it? So, just last week, Labour's Shadow Health Minister Wes Streeting said that we should stop treating the NHS as a religion. Well, today, at Westminster Abbey, we were all listening to the Prime Minister and the Labour leader give religious readings at a church service to honour its birthday. It is laughable, isn't it? The reality is it shouldn't be called the National Health Service. It's more like the National Woke Service, if you ask me. Check out some of the latest job offers. There is an advert for a green agenda and sustainability lead at South West London and St George's Mental Health Trust. The salary, a cool 62 grand a year. Now, I'm sorry that you've had to wait 6 months for an urgent mental health appointment, but you will be pleased to know that if you cling on to life long enough, this hospital will be net zero by 2050. Oh, here's a classic as well. All about the NHS diversity train. Yes, here we are. Gloucestershire Hospitals Foundation Trust is in urgent need of a patient experience manager focusing on equality, diversity and inclusion. Well, they can earn around £42,600 a year. I am sure it will be a tremendous comfort to the people of Gloucestershire who fall foul of the rampant and unfortunate medical negligence on offer across vast swathes of NHS England to know that they were given poor care by a team of multi-ethnic, gay, special needs medical professionals who all feel incredibly valued in the workplace. But we need a smoke-free environment advisor in Wales. That's right, just under £23,000 a year. £23,000. So somebody can say, don't smoke inside or at all if possible. If you are going to smoke, then go outside to that smoking shelter. But please try to not stand on the people who are having massive strokes on the pavement near the entrance because we can't care for them inside. But it gets worse, though. An arts commissioner in Cambridge for £42k a year. Oh, I'm desperately sorry, we will not be able to give you that life-saving chemotherapy today. But whilst you let that news sink in, you can sit in our Arts and Crafts Centre where you can gently weep as you look at this new knockoff Picasso that our arts producer procured from a charity shop down the road. Just spare me this tripe, please. It's enough to make you want to call a nurse, isn't it? But of course, they're probably going to be on strike, so good luck with that. It is impossible to adequately reform a failing public health service while we have politicians literally worshipping it in a church. Sunak read from Matthew. Come, you that are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world, for I was hungry and you gave me food. Sir Keir Starmer reading from Revelations. See, the home of God is among mortals. He will dwell with them. They will be his peoples, and God himself will be with them. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. We're not a normal country, are we? These prayers are meaningless compared to the prayers read at the funerals of all the people who have sadly died as a result of, at times, receiving no care, bad care, or those who had socially distanced funerals during COVID, of course, so that we could protect our beloved NHS. Well, joining me now in the studio is Dr. Ken Aswani, a GP, former medical director for 7 Primary Care Trust. Look, thank you very much. Obviously, that is strong stuff there. I don't expect you to agree with a lot of that. Some of it was tongue-in-cheek, but when we look at the NHS as being told it's the envy of the world, OK, it's not, is it? How can it be?
So, I mean, if we look at outcomes and what we provide for within the NHS, so if somebody's suddenly diagnosed with cancer or as a major road accident, the NHS will provide the best care. And we're very, very lucky and fortunate to have that. I think no one's sort of hiding the challenges, but it's how we approach the challenges. So, you know, how do we reform? How do we focus on prevention? How do we focus on what we call personalisation? So the individual taking responsibility in the right areas to make sure we get the best out of the NHS, and it's always there when we need it.
But it does need a shake-up, and that shake-up requires someone with cojones to be able to do that. I would argue not somebody who goes and reads a prayer for our NHS at Westminster Abbey on its 75th birthday, because that gives it this religious aura, which makes people think maybe it's perfect. And then whenever some kind of change does need to be implemented, people will go, well, you can't do that because it's ungodly.
Well, I think that certainly myself and I think many of my colleagues is that we should be open to change, because you can never stand still. But if we just look at, because most of sort of the NHS and some of the challenges we've had, increased technology, more frail and elderly that we have to look after, if we integrate health and social care and work with the community and carers, and this has been shown in Hull and many other places, there are better outcomes. You know, patients don't always have to be admitted to hospital. But take, for example, immunisation. We've got winter coming up. We don't nearly sort of reach flu immunisation rates, and you know, they don't cost very much, but they can save your life and prevent hospital admissions. Diabetes, heart disease, a lot of this is preventable. So I suppose the message is that we shouldn't really sort of take a medication view of the world or take a medicalised approach. I think we can genuinely take a holistic approach. And mental health is a key example of that. That's always, you know, in the news, etc. But the amount of mental health that we can manage through what we call social prescribing, community and other means can be really effective. So I think the approach is how can we sort of put these in place and actually get improved outcomes and reduce the inequalities, because that's what's going to matter at the end of the day.
Does the NHS spend too much time painting giant rainbow flags on buildings and not enough time looking at whether or not top-level managers are spending the NHS's money well enough?
So the groups that I sort of, you know, and I chair some of these groups really, and we say, look, you know, I mean, we call it a quadruple aim, and it's well written up really. One is that we've got to improve outcomes. We've got to make a real difference. Secondly, we've got to reduce inequalities, because the wider the gap you have, the difficulty, sometimes 15 years survival.
What kind of inequalities are we talking about?
So, for example, you can have one London borough, and south of the borough, you know, you can have 10 years early death rate than the north of the borough. And it can only be 15 minutes. So the other thing is patient experience. We've really got to focus on, because that matters. So patient experience is a big part of quality. And finally, we've got to look after our workforce. So if we can do those 4 things, we're heading in the right direction. So, you know, when I focus like my colleagues and what we need to do and sort of so on, I say, look, just focus on those 4 things, you know, and we'll be making good progress. And that's the way I look at it.
Look, thank you very, very much for coming into the studio. Thank you for putting up with me as well, I must say. It's great stuff. That's, of course, Dr. Ken Aswani, a GP, former medical director for 7 Primary Care Trust. Get your views coming in, gbviews at gbnews.com. But here we go. I told you that we're going to have a big update from Nigel. Here is the very, very latest, because the banking saga has continued, with the City Minister now joining the debate. So Nigel tweeted, the following today. I am delighted that the Chancellor and City Minister are putting pressure on the FCA to review why banks are giving UK PEPs, as politically exposed people, such a hard time. Even better would be to change the law. It's an EU directive and a Brexit government ought to deal with it. This is the development from Nigel now. We had him threatening to go to law, and now he's looking to change the law. So that is the latest from Nigel. And again, I want to emphasise that this isn't simply just a Nigel Farage issue. Of course, this is the Farage show, and he is a massive, massive part of that, even in his absence. But this is really an issue that we're seeing affect more and more people, and it could happen to you. So Nigel is now openly calling for a change in the law. Joining me now is... Oh, sorry, no, not quite. Alexander Tolstoy is an Anglo-Russian and has accused NatWest of behaving like Joseph Stalin's Soviet Union after shutting her bank accounts with no explanation. Justin Darty is a reputation crisis advisor, and he joins me now. There you go. I thought you changed gender for a second there, but there you are.
Hey,
thank you very much for coming in. Great to have you on the show. Right, OK, so let's deal with first things first, then. When you're dealing with your capacity as a reputation advisor, etc., what could be more damaging to somebody's reputation than a string of banks basically saying, we're not having your custom, but we're not telling you why, which makes you look dodgy?
Yes, it's an absolute disgrace, and it is Orwellian. You know, we've had a principle in this country for almost 1,000 years that if you're accused of a crime, you have the right to defend yourself, and part of that is the right to know what you are accused of. This complete mess, this is a complete mess, this PEP business. It also involves people not even knowing what they stand charged with. And when you're cancelled from the digital economy, you are cancelled from life and society, and you're absolutely shafted.
We had an MP on yesterday who revealed, live on this show, that there are people whose businesses supply ammunition for our own armed forces who, because of their line of work, had their bank accounts mistakenly closed, which is a shocker. Talk to me a little bit about the person that you're involved with, Alexandra Tolstoy, who's Anglo-Russian. What's gone on there?
So we are reputation advisors. We advise lots of people who have challenging problems, and her case is one of the worst cases that we have seen. She is a UK citizen. She has been cancelled by a string of banks. She has no idea why this has happened. They won't even talk to her about it. But this is a common problem. You know, it's not just one person. This has happened to hundreds, thousands of people, and what is now happening as a result of what Nigel chose to do last week is that finally people are coming out of the woodwork and making their voices heard.
Absolutely, and this is why it's building such momentum, and this is a crucial point, which is that Nigel's reaction to this has sparked a response from politicians, but also from the FCA. Why are banks scared of the FCA?
Yeah, this gets to the heart of the problem. So the banks are terrified. So the banks have got bad form on all of this. The crisis of 2008, the government came down very hard on the banks, quite rightly, and legislation was introduced. We then saw the Bribery Act a couple of years later, which introduced this concept of the politically exposed person. But we've now ended up with this absolutely mad situation where the banks are more worried about the regulator and they're more worried about their staff and staff woke feelings than they are about the customers. And that is the heart of the problem, I'm afraid, because these banks, NatWest Bank, Barclays Bank and others, they don't give two hoots about their customers. That much is obvious, and that needs to be sorted out and reset.
Absolutely, and this is the line this evening from Nigel, who is calling openly now for a change in the law. Do you think he'll be successful? Do you think we'll do it?
Well, it's a challenge, but certainly government is starting to wake up to this, so that is a good thing. What needs to happen as well is there needs to be a groundswell of public pressure, and people need to find their voice. And on your programme and on the station, you are doing a fabulous job. But it's hard, you know. There are newspapers and publications out there that will not touch this issue.
Well, we saw newspapers and publications, sorry to interrupt, yesterday, doing their best to borderline defamed Nigel, actually, when it came to, well, I think at best a very dodgy alleged phone call from Coutts Bank that may have appeared to have disclosed some private information about Nigel that turned out to possibly not even be true.
Well, I mean, and this is classic, isn't it? This is a bank in panic mode, in a sort of panic reaction, not thinking about the consequences of what they're doing. And I'm afraid that I think this bank has set itself up for some big problems coming up because what they've done is clearly...
Look, fascinating stuff. We have launched a petition to prevent a cashless society. Let's bring that QR code back on if we can. It's on our website. Oh, there we are. gbnews.com/cash. Easy to remember. Or if you have got a smartphone and you're watching a TV or watching us online, right now, this very second, you will see a QR code there. Take your smartphone out, hold it up to the screen, see what happens when you hover it over that QR code. It will take you straight to our petition to help GB News with our campaign and tell the authorities, don't kill cash. You look at what's happening to Nigel, you look at what's happening to loads of people now around the country, and something that, frankly, could happen to you. Do not think it couldn't. It absolutely will. It absolutely will if we let it. So don't kill cash. Thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. Hope to chat to you again very, very soon. Now, coming up, families could be evicted from a military base in Braintree to make room for asylum seekers. We are going to be talking to the leader of that council very, very shortly. This is a big one. I want to emphasise that again. Military families could be evicted from a base in Braintree to make room for asylum seekers. Shocking stuff. Stay tuned.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
OK, strap yourselves in, because despite Rishi claiming that he is stopping the boats, the RAF Wethersfield site is now set to become home to 1,700 fighting-age males. I'm sure that the locals are ecstatic with this news, but to add to this, some military families living there have been given less than a week's notice to leave the premises in order to make way for these asylum seekers. It is nice to see that the government cares so compassionately about the families of those who are willing to risk it all. Isn't it just brilliant? Come on, you don't see this in the adverts, do you? You don't see this in the adverts for our military. Come and join our armed forces. Yeah, we'll teach you new skills. We'll teach you all sorts, and you can fight and die or lose a leg in battle for this country, and then we'll biff your family out of accommodation for people who come from countries where we might have just sent you to fight, unchecked, no idea who they are, or really exactly what their criminal record is, and then we'll let them live in your missus's house. Braintree Council have fought the decision every single step of the way and are appealing the recent ruling in April. Joining me now to discuss this is the Conservative leader of Braintree District Council. It's Graham Butland. Graham, thank you very, very much. Please tell me that this cannot be true, that we have military families being biffed out of accommodation for young illegal immigrants.
The first point I must make is that this is the issue of military families is not an issue which involves Braintree District Council. But I can confirm that the Home Office and the Ministry of Defence have been in touch with local families, local military families currently on that site, to move them to new accommodation, which they say will be closer to their duty, to where they carry out those duties. But the actual removal of those families is not an issue which Braintree District Council has played any part in.
No, I understand that, absolutely, and you're right to make that clear. I don't think anyone is saying for a single second this is your fault or this is the council's fault. This is the fault of the situation that we're in at the moment, and that is a massive, massive problem. But nonetheless, it is happening, and whether or not they're turfed out and made homeless or they're having to move home, still, they are going from living somewhere to not living there anymore, and a group of people who have potentially just arrived here are going to be living there. It does seem as though, frankly, that is deeply unfair.
Well, there are issues that arise from this. Of course, some of these families have children, so there are issues about the schooling of those children, having to move from one school to another. And this is just one of many issues that, as a council, we have been raising in our discussions with the Home Office about this plan to use this site, which we as a council have consistently maintained is not the right place for the type of provision that the government wishes to make.
So what are some of the problems? What have some of these good British military families been saying to you?
Well, in terms of what are the problems with this site, it's an isolated site. It's in the country. It has no public transport. And clearly, the facilities basically are very much as they were when the US forces left that base many, many years ago. It's not going to be a detention centre. It's a place where asylum seekers will be free to come and go.
Free reign.
There's not many places you can go from this place. There's no public transport, as I say. The nearest, largest town is Braintree, which isn't a huge town. And that's some 10 to 12 miles away. We don't think it's the right place for it. We have been battling with the Home Office through the courts. Unfortunately, the courts have not granted us an injunction, and neither have they determined a key issue, which is the government is relying on something which is called Class Q. I won't go into the details, but basically what that means is that the government is saying this is an emergency. We do not, therefore, need to abide by planning with the local authority, and we can just go ahead and do it. And we reject that.
Yeah, they're claiming it's an emergency. I mean, if it is an emergency, it's an emergency of their own making. But when it comes to the families, what are they saying to you? We've just heard there from you something that I must admit I hadn't considered before, but it kind of makes me even more angry, which is that you've got children who will be living at sites like this, going to schools with a life, who will probably end up being traumatised, possibly, certainly massively discomforted by having to move to a different school to set up a new life somewhere else in order for us to prioritise people who we quite possibly don't even know what convictions they have in foreign countries, which is staggering.
Well, I'm not going to use that sort of language about the asylum seekers that are coming in. They will need to be properly processed. In terms of the families themselves, clearly they are military families. They are used to moving from one military base to another. And as far as the direct contact between those families and the council, there has been none, because they're not being made homeless, which would be the only occasion, if you like, when someone would come to us as the local housing authority to assist. The council has been assured that these people have been properly contacted by both the Home Office and the Ministry of Defence. But I cannot give you any evidence that has either taken place or not taken place.
OK, well, it's interesting. I mean, I tell you what, I'd be chaining myself to the fence post outside my house if I particularly cared about it. But there we go. Look, thank you very much. It's Conservative leader of Braintree District Council, Graham Butland. Those adverts, don't you? I was made in Carlisle, but I was, made in the Royal Navy, whatever the heck it is, It's ridiculous, isn't it, all that? They don't show you this idea that you're going to be turfed out to make way for somebody else. I mean, it's just absolutely disgraceful, isn't it? But coming up, we will get the latest on the ULEZ court appeal. Will they defeat Sadiq Khan? Hopefully they do, actually. I also have a couple of other absolute gems coming your way, including we tried to get to the bottom of what on earth is going on with this Captain Sir Tom Moore charity controversy. I've had loads of emails in about this today, loads of tweets in about this today. We're going to try and find out, see if we can find out exactly what is going on there. gbviews@gbnews.com. Don't move.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Britain's News Channel.
The Mayor of London does have the express power to expand into outer areas. This is, of course, to do with ULEZ. That's been heard at the High Court this week. 5 outer London councils are challenging the plans, alleging that Sadiq Khan acted unlawfully by applying an order varying existing regulations. Look, all of this sounds a bit dull. I assure you that it's not. Let me simplify it for you. Do you fancy having to remortgage your house in order to drive your car to work or pick your kids up from school? If the answer to that is no, then listen up. From the 29th of August, the Labour Mayor wants to expand the ULEZ to include the whole of Greater London. So this comes into Buckinghamshire, Surrey, Kent, Essex and Hertfordshire, basically places that have not really got that much to do with London geographically, covering an area 3 times as big as the current zone. Now, if you're watching this, as I know a lot of you are, and you're nowhere near London, you're up north or whatever, just seriously, again, listen up, because the court case that's happening right now could determine whether or not that particularly rural, leafy bit of the world that you live in or wherever you live at the moment that really is like an hour outside your nearest city, yeah, the kind of place that you shouldn't really be paying in order to drive around in for clean air, yeah, well, you might be if this court case is successful. This will set the tone for the nation. A judgment from the hearing is expected later this month. I'm very pleased to say I'm joined now by Simon Forthrop, Conservative councillor for Bromley London Borough Council, and you have had the dubious honour of sitting in a courtroom for the last couple of days, listening to boring waffle. But, how important is it, firstly, that Sadiq Khan is defeated here, and what are the chances?
First of all, it is really, really important that Sadiq Khan is defeated. Frankly, people's livelihoods, people's jobs, people's care packages, whole things like that are affected by it. I know people who are wondering how they're going to go and visit the doctor. These are old people that just physically can't do it. And it's remarkable that it's so important that even the Labour candidate in Uxbridge has decided to come out against ULEZ. Of course, because I think the writing's on the wall rather. And I think the chances are pretty good. I have to say, and you don't often say this about judges, the judge seemed to be really fair-minded. He was asking probing questions, not only of our side, but of the other side, of the TfL side of the case. And he seemed to be really switched on. So I hope he's going to take, he said, up to the end of July, possibly, to reach and reserve his judgment.
All right, so let's just put this into a bit of context for people who, say, live near Liverpool or Manchester or Birmingham. Let's try and contextualise this. So how far outside London would some people be living where they would drive their car off their driveway and then get, I think, we'll have to pay £12.50 for the privilege, essentially?
Literally, there's some people that are like 2 metres off the boundary because they have to come out through the ULEZ zone to go and drive before they can get out. And there's literally people that are affected like that. But, of course, you forget that London is a massive city. We've got a huge population. People come from all over to visit their relatives. Things like that are going to stop. You know, I have very, very elderly parents who will be deterred from it. Their car isn't ULEZ compliant. No. At their time of life, you know, they're more worried about how long they'll last, whether they'll get a new car.
Yeah.
So
he'd already bought the cameras, apparently, before he'd done the public consultation. Then anybody who turned up to oppose it, and this video is available online, by the way, which include a wide-ranging demographic of people, hugely working-class group. Apparently they were all far-right. Oh, you're all far-right. If you oppose the ULEZ, then you are just far-right, which is absolutely bonkers, isn't it? I mean, this could cripple people.
It certainly could, and, you know, we're experiencing that. And I'll give you some examples. In our hospitals, some of the nurses that work outside the area...
Far-right nurses.
Sorry, yeah.
They're all,
having problems. And we laugh, but it's serious.
Yeah.
People are really affected. Our social workers are thinking of quitting and not coming in. So that's people's livelihoods.
Yeah.
So, and then, of course, if you look at my Safer Neighbourhood team in the ward that I represent, none of those live in the area. If they've got to come in as well, that's the police force, effectively. So all of our key services are under threat.
This is it. In order to sacrifice ourselves, yet again, at an altar of net zero, we had to surrender ourselves without any police, nurses or social care workers. I mean, you couldn't make it up. But thank you very much. Great to have you in the studio, and thank you very much for attending that. Being our kind of roving reporter almost as well, our court case there. So Simon Forthrop there. Conservative councillor for Bromley, London Borough Council. Look, like I said, I don't think you fancy this happening in a town or city near you, but mark my words, there's every chance that it will. But next, and this is big, we're going to go live to the ruling over the controversial Dambusters dog grave. Will it stay or will it go? We are going live for that. And this is the scandal. Captain Tom's daughter's swimming pool. Yes, that's right. Now, is this the worst case of charity abuse ever? Don't go away. That is coming your way in a tip.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut off?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc. That's the whole point. But
and action.
Sergeant read my superstar panel. They're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News. Britain's watching.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Big news. A request to move the body of a dog buried at RAF Scampton has just been rejected by West Lindsey District Council at their meeting this evening. RAF Heritage submitted the request to move the grave of the black Labrador, whose name is a racial slur. The dog was owned by Wing Commander Guy Gibson, who led the famous Dambusters raid from RAF Scampton in May 1943. The dog died on the eve of that raid. It was buried on the grounds, which is now set to be used, obviously, to accommodate illegal migrants, asylum seekers. RAF Heritage wish to remove the grave and the memorial to the dog and move it to RAF Merham in Norfolk, where I'm reliably informed the dog never even enjoyed walkies. Our East Midlands reporter, Will Hollis, is currently at the meeting. Look, Will, thank you very much. Go on, take it away. What's just happened moments ago?
Yes, well, earlier today when I was reporting on this story, a member of the Save Our Scampton community group said that keeping Guy Gibson's dog here at Scampton is just one small part of a much bigger battle. And today here at this planning committee meeting that West Lindsey District Council described as extraordinary, that decision to remove Guy Gibson's dog has been rejected. It literally came through just a few moments ago, Patrick. Essentially what I was overhearing while I was just waiting to go live into your programme tonight was that the members of the planning committee were voting, and they were voting whether or not to reject or to accept the planning officer's recommendations, and the planning officer's recommendation was to reject that proposal by RAF Heritage to remove Guy Gibson's dog, and they voted unanimously to in favour of that proposal. So they have now voted to reject the proposals that Guy Gibson's dog can be removed. What we've been hearing in the last hour in this planning meeting that was very calm, it was very patient, was people offering their objections. There was also people stating why they think that Guy Gibson's dog should be removed. But overwhelmingly, it was that people wanted this dog to stay, and they wanted the dog to stay ultimately because it is a part of their history and their heritage. One of the big arguments, Patrick, of course, is what will happen to a £300 million deal if 2,000 asylum seekers are moved into Scampton. And if that dog isn't there, that would certainly hamper whatever that deal might be in the future. So, as we've said, it is official. Guy Gibson's dog is expected to stay here at RAF Scampton.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's important as well in the context, well, of course, to say that another layer of controversy to this dog is its name, which we will not be repeating, but of course is a racial slur. What were some people saying at the meeting in terms of why they thought that dog should remain there then? What were the kind of things? Was the racial context raised as well? Go on, talk to me about that a bit.
Well, to be honest, Patrick, there was only one time that I saw that the racial context of the dog's name was actually raised, and that was at the start, and that was the chair of the planning committee. And he said that we will not be using the name of Guy Gibson's dog, and anybody that does use the name of Guy Gibson's dog will have their microphone turned off and they will be asked to sit down. It wasn't said that they will be asked to leave, and it wasn't said that they will be dragged out, but there is police and there is security here. Mainly what people were talking about was what would happen if the dog was taken away to this heritage deal, £300 million on the table from Scampton Holdings to turn RAF Scampton into a world-class heritage centre. Another thing that was brought up was, why would you move a dog that had no connection to RAF Marham in Norfolk 80 miles away to that base if only in 20 years 617 Squadron would move from that base, or RAF Marham would close down? There's been a number of times that that 617 Squadron, which is of course the Dambusters Squadron, has been disbanded and then it's been brought back. So there have been a number of things that have been raised, but the big question was, why would you move a dog somewhere that it has no connection when you have a big deal on the table that could bring jobs and money to this community?
Well, look, thank you very, very much. I know that you've been all over this story all day for us and bringing us just up to the second big breaking news there. That is Will Hollis, who is, of course, at that meeting. Joining me now is Femi Nylander, who's actor, writer, campaigner. Femi, look, thank you very, very much. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. Any second now. There we go. Right, good stuff. What do you make of this decision, then, not to remove the dog?
I only just heard about this today. At the end of the day, Yeah, it's a dog. It's a dog. It's kind of drives home. It's not even just a dog. It's the grave of a dog that's been dead for a very long time. And what you said at the beginning, where you said illegal migrants, and then you corrected yourself and said asylum seekers, because asylum seekers doesn't mean the same thing as illegal migrant. You're allowed to claim asylum under international law, and it's actually a legal thing to say I am
I think if somebody's entered this country illegally, that's what I would refer
just let me
to
finish,
as
please.
migrant.
Well, okay, fair enough. Fair enough. But nonetheless, I mean, illegal. We're talking about national law. We're talking about international law. The system of applying for asylum in a country is something which is legal under international law. Now, when we move on from that, it just goes. It's this empathy, isn't it? It's the fact that Britons, not all Britons, some Britons, have the ability to empathize with animals. They have the ability to empathize with their pets. They think that pets should be able to have a grave, and that grave should be respected. And yet they feel no empathy or no sadness when they know that the Mediterranean is becoming a mass grave for people fleeing from war, fleeing from persecution, fleeing from poverty. They have no empathy with these human beings.
Is it not what the dog is a symbol of, Femi? Do you know what the dog is a symbol of? The dog is a symbol of a squadron that took part in the Dambusters raid that helped us to win the war. It's a massively kind of iconic thing. That area also, to be fair, I mean, I have sympathy with the people in that area who pride themselves on the heritage of that site and the local history of it and the fact that it helped us win the war and the fact they were about to get 300 million quid worth of investment. And the dog, yes, I understand that maybe for you it is just a dead dog and it's some bones in the ground. I do get that, right? But it is a symbol of something a lot bigger and, yeah, people do empathise with that.
I mean, you can have a symbol. A symbol is a symbol, a grave is a grave, and a grave of bones in the ground, and you're saying it's a grave, it's a dog, we care about the dog. You can have any kind of symbol about this. You could have a big plaque, you could have any kind of thing. At the end of the day, if they're trying to build something and there's this grave in the way, and for some reason or the other they want to even, you could even move the headstone. But let's be real about this. In the UK, we eat animals all the time. People eat animals all the time. We farm animals. Like there's a clear thing where you say an animal isn't a human in the UK, supposedly, and yet we have all this empathy with a dog, but at the same time, we don't care about migrants. We don't care about people who are human beings just because they're from a different country.
All right, Femi.
And because they have a different history to us. It doesn't make sense to me.
Well, it's interesting. Look, Femi, thank you very much. I do obviously appreciate your input on all this. It's Femi Nowlander, their actor, writer and campaigner. I think the fact is that we are being forced to care about people, aren't we, at the taxpayers' expense. Now, finally, and this has been massively controversial, and I don't know about you, but I get the sense there's a lot more left to run on this one. The saga of Captain Tom Moore's daughter using the charity set up in his name to get a swimming pool in her back garden. Hannah Ingram Moore used the foundation's name in documents to get planning permission for a spa complex. The local council has now ordered it to be demolished. The reaction online has been absolutely hilarious, by the way. Actor Russell Crowe's picture of a beautifully lit up town with the caption, "Where am I now?" One person tweeted, "Captain Tom's daughter's back garden." Comedian Simon Brodkin wrote, "Am I the only one who feels Captain Tom's family have done nothing wrong? I'm happy that my donation was helped to build a spa and pool complex for his lovely daughter and her husband Colin, who must both still be exhausted from watching Tom walk around the garden 100 times. Hashtag good for them." And another one said, "Captain Tom walked so she could swim." OK, there we go. Who best to talk about this than the second funniest man at GB News? After me, of course, is Steve N. Allen, comedian and GB News presenter. This has got a long way to go, I suspect. I mean, not content with Captain Sir Tom Moore being dragged to the Caribbean shortly before his death.
Yeah.
We now have a situation where there is a spa at his gaff.
Well, I mean, you say it's a spa, but I think if you check the paperwork, it is the Sir Captain Tom Moore Memorial Building, available for everyone's use as long as it's just the family, because there was a sign that said private, which makes it less public. I think that's almost the definition of the word. So they applied for retrospective planning permission. So that other parts were perfectly normally built, and they decided to put this spa pool, because it's important to know that's not one of the big shops that sells stuff between 7 and 11. And they put it in the back garden, which this is the problem for me. That means you can't walk around the back garden. So it's definitely not what he would have wanted. If there's one thing we know about Captain Tom, he liked walking in back gardens. So in many ways, this is... it rubs me up the wrong way.
I mean, look, obviously they are assisting the Charity Commission with their investigation. There was an investigation launched around a year ago as well, or some inquiries that were being launched. So it's not the first time. There has been, whether this is unfair or not, there has been a whiff around the Captain Sir Tom Moore Foundation, or whatever the heck it's called, for a while, hasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, they had to look into how much the daughter was getting paid to be the boss of this charitable foundation, paying herself 100 grand. They said that was too much, and eventually she had to go on 85 grand a year. I'd still take that, in case the Sir Captain Steve charity ever works out. I've applied because I want to build a thing out the back, and I thought if I put my name on it...
Public use?
Yeah, well, public if you're in my family, then, yeah, you never know. I mean, we do need to watch out for this because, firstly, the amount of money they raised was huge. I worry about families kicking their old relatives around the garden a few times for TikTok, just in case it turns into millions. And then the way that it's spent. I mean, at some point, there'll be an application for a Sir Captain Tom Moore Mercedes, which I'm sure they need to...
Well, exactly. I mean, the Captain Sir Tom Moore Privately Educated Kids Fund isn't going to go away anytime soon.
Public use for the kids.
For public use for the kids at public school, I suppose. The Captain Sir Tom Moore jet.
Yeah, I should say some of this is me being a little bit sarcastic for humorous reasons because I don't want to get sued.
No.
I'm sure they could afford great lawyers from the Sir Captain Tom Fund for buying lawyers.
Legal fund, yeah, no, absolutely. The barrister part, 100%. Look, Steve, thank you very much. There's Steve Van Allen there, comedian, GB News presenter. It's important as well to note that representatives of the Captain Sir Tom Moore group deny doing anything wrong, of course. Now, my What the Farage moment today. Caught me by surprise, that, because, of course, my name is not Farage, but there we go. It has emerged that Sleepy Joe has backed the unelected EU President Ursula von der Leyen, with a background in medicine, to be the next head of NATO, having recently blocked the idea of Defence Secretary and former captain in the Scots Guards, Ben Wallace, taking up the post. Ursula von der Leyen once reportedly made the German military train with broom handles instead of guns because they weren't well equipped enough, and naturally now let's promote this woman today. What has she got on people that she's become the head of the European Union, and then now she's... Anyway, now, this is a woman, of course, who was never voted into her position. Jacob Rees-Mogg joins me now. Jacob, a disgrace?
Well, you've stolen most of my Mogg.
Oh, really?
That's exactly what I'm going to be talking about. It seems that you get promoted more and more when you're not any good at the previous job and nobody has to vote for you. So there's a strong desire, it seems, to appoint her. But what does it say about the special relationship? Come on. Biden vetoes the highly qualified, highly experienced, highly effective Ben Wallace.
Yep.
And then he wants to put in the not necessarily so competent von der Leyen. This indicates he holds the special relationship in very low regard, unlike most Americans, of course.
Look, absolutely, I look forward to hearing that monologue. Thank you very much, Jacob. Jacob Rees-Mogg will be lighting up your screens in a matter of seconds. I've been Patrick Christys. I'll see you tomorrow.
Hello there, very good evening. I'm Jonathan Vautry here with your latest GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. Many of us did see some sunny intervals throughout today, and whilst there is an area of low pressure waiting in the wings out in the Atlantic, slowly moving towards the UK, for many of us throughout this evening and overnight, we are still in this interim, slightly quieter period, and so many of the showers that were around during the day will slowly fade their way out, and a lot of us should see some clear intervals during the overnight period. Some mist and fog patches are possible, but they'll readily clear once we reach dawn on Thursday morning. Temperatures generally holding up around 11-12 degrees Celsius, but we could just drop into single figures in some rural areas and perhaps a bit more widely across parts of eastern Scotland. But for many of us, seeing a fair amount of brightness first thing on Thursday morning, and for much of Scotland, England and Wales, it will be a relatively similar day. Sunny spells with a scattering of showers. A very different theme to the weather for Northern Ireland, though. This band of rain moving its way in, turning things quite damp and windy. Temperatures going to be holding back underneath that persistent cloud for Northern Ireland, but where we see the sunshine elsewhere could climb towards 22-23 Celsius. This rain in the west then is going to push its way into the west of Scotland, and that could provide again some heavy outbreaks during the overnight period. Staying much drier further towards the south and east with some clear intervals, allowing for a good amount of sunshine first thing on Friday morning as we get up, and underneath that sunshine temperatures will be responding, climbing to the high 20s in places. Definitely a different feel further towards the north and west. Much cloudier, further outbreaks of rain for Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland, perhaps a few spells of showers in northwest England as well. We get this second area of low pressure gradually moving its way towards the UK for Saturday, and that cold front could provide a thundery outbreak for many of us as we move into the first half of the weekend. And temperatures will also be building through Saturday, perhaps reaching 30 degrees Celsius, but something fresher for Sunday.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to